40. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It is Friday, May 3rd, 2024. 40 is the number of points that Jalen Brunson scored yet again. 3 straight games for the New York Knicks, bringing back memories of Bernard King of the Bernie and Ernie show, who gave you 340s in 84, which was a great year for the Knicks when they beat the Pistons in 5 in round 1. It used to only be 3 out of 5. And then lost to the Celtics and Larry Bird in 7. I remember that series clear as day. Sitting watching the Knicks game last night. Obviously, I picked them in the nothing personal pick of the day. I did not think they would lose. I thought they would lose and go to a game 7. Of course, we talked about the fact that the NBA is desperate to have the Knicks advance. For those thinking that the Pacers, and we'll get to Bucks Pacers in a few minutes, for those who think the Pacers actually have a chance, having the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics would be very, very important to the NBA as they are navigating the waters of getting new broadcast deals. So I was watching the Knicks game, thinking to myself, how can I embrace this team? What about them is interesting? Is Jalen Brunson this Mount Rushmore of Knicks? All of the platitudes. He's the greatest Knick since Clyde Frazier. I can't remember who said that, Coca. Someone dropped that line, which is hard for me to imagine. Maybe it was one of the announcers of the game one of these days. Jalen Brunson, when he signed with the Knicks from the Mavericks, you remember the whole tampering. He signed with the Knicks immediately. Turns out to be a great deal for the Knicks in theory, given how many players are overpaid and not performing. And all I kept thinking about during the game was Patrick Ewing and Adam Silver. 2 names that I'm focused on. Patrick Ewing having to go to games in New York and pretending he's all happy, and John Starks jumping up and down with Latrell Sprewell and Carmelo Anthony, and thinking about what never happened for Patrick other than 1994 when he made the finals. But I was really thinking about Adam Silver as he engages with the NBA playoffs. This is really a second season. The preseason is the regular season. No one has been able to figure out a map to make the regular season interesting. But come playoff time, everybody's tuning in. The focus is on the court, the players. And Adam Silver's thinking, what do I possibly do to maximize the monetization of this moment? Who are the players who we can take advantage of? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but who are the players who we can figure out how to market and how to make them stars? And he's looking at this Knick team without Julius Randle, which may make them better, side note. And what he's learned from David Stern, the previous commissioner, and what we know is in a star-driven league, it is stars who move the needle. And he's looking at a playoffs where Durant is home, Curry's home, LeBron James is home, spoiler alert, Giannis is home. And he's looking at this Knicks team, and he's thinking, who? It is Jalen Brunson? This is the person who's going to be our tent pole for the biggest media market, the most important team in the NBA. Sorry, Lakers fans. Sorry, Warriors fans. The Knicks are the single most important team in the NBA universe. It is indisputable financially that is how the league has always looked at them. Would this be a good time to pull out the Patrick Ewing envelope lottery story, which people may not have heard of? Go look it up. It's always been about the Knicks in the same way that I can't hide from the reality that in baseball, it's always been about the Yankees. And the Mets are the Nets. It's always been about getting the largest teams as good as you can for as long as they can be, and hoping that they make it deep into a playoff run, which gains exposure for networks who are showing it, which has an ancillary benefit of helping the programming of the networks that have the playoffs. It's all good. And are the Knicks even in the same conversation as the Celtics in the Eastern Conference? or as the Nuggets or the Thunder or even the T-Wolves in the Western Conference. And watching the game, I don't see it. But it's going to unravel as the next few weeks happen. And we'll see. I mean, it's not that I'm not excited for you Knicks fans and for me trying to be a fan. I didn't think they'd win, but they did. I'll tell you who I didn't think would win, and that is the Philadelphia 76ers and their ownership. Did you see the picture? I forgot to ask you this pre-show, Coca. I wanted to get the video. During the broadcast last night, they showed Josh Harris, and he was sitting there courtside, I assume. He looked so bad. And this was when Joel Embiid could barely get up and down the court, and it just didn't look good for the Sixers. They ended up coming back and making it a game, but they were down 20 in the first period. And I'm looking at Josh Harris, and I was wondering whether he wishes that he were at Commanders training camp, which hasn't even started. Is he still enjoying owning the Sixers, or does he realize that the entire process that he's gone through has been for naught because they're not a good team? They are way too focused on Maxey and Embiid. I wonder whether Josh Harris was turning around during the game and smiling at the 2,000 people he bought tickets for. I heard a bunch of Knicks fans. Exactly what we thought would happen during the game happened. The lower down, it was total Knicks. Made me laugh. I don't wish ill things on the owner, Josh Harris, at all. I just think that it's a lot harder than people realize. Patrick Beverly is going to get suspended. That's going to be it for Patrick Beverly. He's a free agent to be. He's the player on the Bucks. Do we have video of Patrick Beverly throwing the ball into the stands? There was a guy sitting like third row or second row or first row behind the Bucks bench. For whatever reason, Beverly is throwing the ball at him. The guy throws it back, and then Beverly whips it at him again. The Bucks completely unraveled. Get that Giannis didn't play. Forget that Lillard had the calf issue or the Achilles issue. The Bucks, a team that I thought was going to win the East. As a matter of fact, I made it a wait to see on September 28th of 2023 that the Bucks would win the East. I got that one wrong. We're revisiting it. But I'm watching the Bucks, and I'm watching Doc Rivers, and I'm watching him lumber up and down the sideline, not looking as bad as Thibodeau. Nobody could look as bad as Thibodeau. Thibodeau makes Jeff Van Gundy look like a runway model. So I'm watching Doc Rivers and thinking about the change that the Bucks made at coach and how we talked about it, nothing personal, and said a midseason change like that, there must have been an acute issue with Adrian Griffith. But what could it have been? Was the record not befitting the way the quality of the team was in the eyes of the evaluators employed by the Bucks, or more likely something very bad happened? So they bring in Doc Rivers, who succeeds in a coup. Although, wait a minute, let's be consistent. If it's something acute, it can't be a coup. If it's a coup, that means that Doc Rivers had this planned Machiavellian style to become the coach. Except Doc Rivers doesn't win playoff series and hasn't in a long while. And the Bucks lose and Doc Rivers wins. That's what was in my head during game one last night, that Doc Rivers got a 4-year, $40 million deal and his team didn't get better. And somehow he snowed the owners into thinking that he is somehow going to be the answer, the Allen Iverson of the Milwaukee Bucks. And they're just not good enough. It's not like the Pacers are this sort of incredible team. I got to get back to Patrick Beverly because I am going to take a page. I don't often take a page out of a player business, but I'm going to. Do you know what Patrick Beverly did after the game? He had a scrum around him where he's talking about the game. Do you have video of that, by the way, Coca? Anything of Patrick Beverly that we can show? our audience who's on Nothing Personal. Look at this.
Here.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Before I finish. You subscribe to my pod?
Do I subscribe to you? I do not.
So you can't interview me then. No
Okay, well,
disrespect.
Jamal is
You,
here.
you,
so-
you subscribe? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Again, there were a couple times within a
Do
bucket
you
or two.
subscribe to
the
my
previous games,
pod?
y'all have been able to kind of get over that hump, or maybe. Was it anything they did in particular, or was it just one of those where the bucket didn't go down, there wasn't the stop, they made one? What kind of prevented that you all from being able to get over, kind of like you haven't?
Look at him. He
Just
keeps,
move that mic,
he
please,
keeps
or just
shoving
get
the
out circle,
microphone
please,
away.
for me, please, ma'am. If you're not subscribed to my pod, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Here.
Excuse me.
Oh my God, that's so great. First of all, that reporter could have easily just taken out the phone, searched the Patrick Beverly podcast, and hit subscribe. Secondly, the NBA is going to have a major problem with that. The rules of the Major League Baseball Players Writers Association, the BBWAA, is you get access post game to players. Now players are saying, hey, I've got a podcast. I'm going to deliver all news through my podcast. Smart move. Why not? But you don't need to be a subscriber to interview me after the game. But that's what Beverly was saying, which I love. What an absolute ridiculous thing to do. Now, from a business standpoint, I can sort of dig it because I want to do business with people who do business with me. I want to do business with people who do business with me. The business of a post-game interview is not the Patrick Beverly business. That is the NBA business and the Milwaukee Bucks business. He does not have a right to discriminate, and I don't mean that in the true sense of the word, against anyone who isn't a fan of his podcast at all. So the NBA is going to have a big problem with that. Not even close to the problem they're going to have it'll be the writers who have a bigger problem, but not even close to the problem that the NBA is going to have of him whipping the ball into the stands the way he did. Beverly took to Twitter and he said, exchanged, not fair at all, exchange between a fan and our ball club all night. We warned and asked for help all night. Not fair, but I have to be better and I will. What he's referring to is that there's a ton of hecklers. Fans have access to players that are within 2 feet of players, the way the NBA does its seating. You can see whenever a coach. I never thought about sitting in those seats because you're constantly obstructed by the coach who's standing up and you're sort of bobbing your head back and forth to try to see. Now, it is cool, maybe for a game, to be that close to a huddle and that close to players and coaches. But as like a season ticket holder, count me out. Not that interested in that. But when you put fans that close to players, you're definitely risking, and I don't mean the Monica Seles type risk. I mean the risk of some sort of incitement of interaction. And the problem with inciting interaction is you just don't know at what level will it be. Will it be friendly or will it be malice at the palace? So you've got that entire universe of possibilities, and every once in a while it flares up. And last night it flared up with Beverly, and I'm trying to think how often, Coca. I would say twice a season. That's probably right. 2 or 3 times a season, we would talk to our players about audience and fan interaction, and we would encourage none of it. Players used to have the habit of trying to contact certain fans in the stands or interact with certain fans, some of it with the hope of being social, some of it with the hope of getting their point across if they're being heckled. I never understood the upside of players interacting with fans because the fans, the most trouble they can get in, short of committing some sort of assault or battery, the most trouble they can get in is losing their tickets for a season, a lifetime ban, maybe being escorted out just for that particular game. But what a player is actually subject to is losing wages, having their wages garnished by being fined, because the NBA can't fine a fan, but they sure as heck can fine a player. And so we'd say to the players, is it really worth it? One player said to me, he was a former pitcher in our bullpen. He said to me, but we have to defend ourselves. I never really understood that point of view. Defend yourselves from what? The hurt of words? The annoyance? It's not in the criminal justice world, even in the civil world, litigation world. If somebody is all up in your kitchen and telling you what a bad person you are, or telling you what a pain in the neck you are, you don't have the right to touch them. I've got to wait to see for you. Wait to see. Patrick Beverly is going to get suspended. He is going to get suspended for his action, and it's going to be 10 games. That's how serious it is what Patrick Beverly did by whipping the ball to that fan. Now he's a free agent, but it is, watch, a suspension's coming. One more cleanup on a wait to see, Coca, as the Pacers won their first playoff series since 2014. I had the Suns not making the Western Conference Finals on June 19th of 23. So that's almost a year ago. I told you they would not make the Western Conference Finals, and they didn't. So that's going to be a yes. Nothing personal pick of the day. We are 56 and 65 after a split. We told you to take the Astros over the Guardians. Winner, the Astros. I think you're going to see the Astros start to get hot. We had the Sixers -3 over the Knicks. That did not happen. All right, what am I watching for this weekend? Can we preview the Nuggets-Wolves series very briefly? The Nuggets are favored by 4.5 points over the Wolves. The Wolves are a great story of the moment, the Minnesota Timberwolves. All of their drama on the ownership side, amazing articles about the fighting between A-Rod and Glenn Taylor, the current owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves. All of the questions about distraction and how it's taken away from this playoff run that the Wolves are on. News alert, players don't give a flying rat's bippy. They're not, oh, we can't play well because we have owners who are fighting. We don't know who's going to own the team. When we were going through the sale of the Marlins in 16-17, when we were going through the movement and sale of the Expos in 01, players would ask about it, certain players, not many. And I would say, hey, does it matter to you? Well, when a new owner comes in, we don't know who the team president will be. Make a change at manager. But actually, it doesn't. The T-Wolves are getting 4.5 points from the Nuggets in game 1 on Saturday. The Nuggets are going to win the series. The Nuggets are going to win the game. They are going to cover. We're taking the Nuggets 4.5 over the Wolves because they're so distracted by A-Rod. The other pick is we're going to take the Mavs 8 over the Clips. There's no Kawhi Leonard. The Mavs are going to clinch the series, and that'll be it for Ballmer and the Clippers. That'll be it for Leonard and George. That'll be it for Harden and Westbrook. That'll be it. Urgency. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It is May 3rd, 2024. And let's talk about urgency. Love that word. Everything I do is with urgency. It's with purpose. Every move I make, every breath I take, I want to be efficient in my mannerisms, in my actions, because time is ticking. There are public companies who are forced quarterly to have quarterly earnings calls. They meet with shareholders, though it's very one way and they don't take many questions, but they meet with Wall Street analysts because public companies want Wall Street analysts to like the prospects of their public company. So then the analysts will say, hey, buy this stock. It's undervalued. And then that will help push up the value of the stock. That's why you do projections when you're a public company. And that's why you hear and read this company did not meet their projections. They were 1 penny below in earnings per share. All of these analytics and stats that are all based on stock price. I get to revisit the Oakland A's right now. What's becoming easily post Dan Snyder my favorite thing to talk about because of all the misinformation out there. Bally's had its first quarter earnings call the other day. And you put your CFO on, you have various people talk on these analyst calls. And this guy, Charles, is the SVP of finance and the corporate treasurer of Bally's Corp. As good as person as any to talk on the call. And listen to what he said when asked about the development of the 36 acres where the Tropicana is in Vegas, of which 25% is supposed to fit the Oakland A's new ballpark in Vegas. Without reiterating that 9 acres is a bunch of horse hockey, can't fit what they're trying to build, but forget all that, because that just happens to be true. Let's move on to how he answered that question. What's happening with the development of the Tropicana site? Because we all assumed it was being developed because John Fisher said, we can't release renderings because we're going to do it together. We're going to do it with Bally's and show you an entire site plan of how amazing it's all going to be and how the ballpark fits right within the vision of Bally's as a destination resort for 400,000 tourists a year. And the guy said, right on the call, and I quote, "We have absolutely no urgency whatsoever to get to certainty," speaking about the development of the parcel, "because our option value increases over time closer to the date. And the more that they invest closer to the 28th season," talking about the A's, "while we understand that you would like to have some certainty, that's not how we maximize the value of that option." Let me explain what he's talking about here. Bally's has that 36-acre parcel. They have the right to develop on it. And what they're saying is that it's best not to develop now because the longer they wait, they feel as though the value of that development piece will increase. Therefore, investing current day capital, which will have a depressed, what's the word? It will have a depressed, not a value. It will have, I'm having a moment here on a live show, impact. Thank you. Thank you, Coco. It will have a depressed impact on the value of the land if people see what it's going to be versus dream what it's going to be. It's the exact concept we've discussed where if you don't have a TV deal and you're selling a team, you get to sell it for more because people dream that the value will be X plus Y. If you don't have a naming rights deal, you can sell your team for more because people assume they can get a huge naming rights deal. It's people assuming they can fill a vacuum positively versus either neutrally or negatively. So what he's trying to convince the analysts of on this earnings call is that the fact that they're not spending money to develop the parcel is a positive for Bally's. What he really isn't saying, but what the analysts really do understand, is that they're spending their money on different projects. There's one in Chicago, but they're spending their money. They don't have the money. The stock is not strong enough, and they're not ready to develop financially that parcel in Vegas. This will give you the best indicator yet how desperate Rob Manfred and the rest of baseball is about getting a deal done in Vegas. Because the only way a Vegas ballpark works at that parcel is if it's part of a bigger development. And even then, it's unlikely it's going to work during the summer for baseball. But you put a ballpark with nothing around it, it's called Lone Depot. The whole point is to make sure you've got development, sort of like what they were able to do at Howard Terminal, but didn't pull the trigger on. Sort of like what all of these other owners are doing, where the ancillary development is the thing. Now, of course, the A's have no financial incentive for the ancillary development. They don't get paid for it. They don't own it, but they benefit from it. But if baseball somehow is a party to the approval of a stadium as yet designed, as yet financed, that is standing alone for 9 acres with 36 minus 9, 27 acres empty for a number of years, That's just being complicit in a terrible plan. I can't wait to see what happens in that area on that parcel. They're supposed to implode the Tropicana in October. We already gave you the timeline for the A's ballpark to happen. They got to start doing something real 3 years prior to opening. So March of 28, they got to start March of 25. That's under a year. They better hurry. Somebody came out with a rumor yesterday that already the $1.5 billion price tag was based on fantasy, and that the real cost of a stadium is going to be at least 1.8 or more. Quick thing, Coca, we didn't say that we were going to talk about this, but I want to. The way you do a stadium budget is that you have to know exactly what is being built, and you don't get that from a rendering. There are people who will tell you, we have a budget, and then we give the construction manager, we have $1.5 billion. You get to me of what you can build for that. Work with the architect and figure out build to that number. When you've got a rendering and a dream of what you want your ballpark to look like, and then you say, get me a number, they're not starting at 1.5 billion. They start at 0 and build the budget up, and it ends where it ends. But they can only do that when you have specifics. The A's have nothing specific at the moment. They have a rendering. And I mean specific down to the damn outlets, the chairs, the build out of your suites, the material for that great see-through wall that will somehow give you the greatest view ever of the Strip. Give me a break, would you? The material of the roof has to be sourced and then priced, and you only get a price for the materials when you have a contract and you know when you're buying it. They can't get a price of steel right now because they're not willing to sign a contract. We only got a price when we were willing to go forward. Can't wait. I can't wait. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to review The Talented Mr. Ripley. You're going to think that's an old movie, and it is, but I'll explain to you why I watched it. And then we're going to talk about the New York Yankees and a quick backstep that Aaron Boone had to take when a rumor came out about Aaron Judge. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's David Samson. How are we doing today? It is Friday. Hopefully you will all have a good, safe weekend. Thank you for being a part of the Nothing Personal family. We love what we do every day. We're going to keep going. DavidSampsonPodcast.com. Enjoy some merch. We haven't dropped a new shirt in a while. I think we should do that. I think when we add new concert dates, which will be announced shortly, we'll do more merch, more concert merch. Maybe come up with we never came up with that 4869 shirt. Why is that? We're such a small operation doing shows every day. It's hard to keep track of everything. I apologize for that. Somehow I still have time to watch a movie. I'm not reviewing it today, but I did watch yesterday. I watched the new Anne Hathaway movie. I'm going to review that on Monday for you on Amazon, The Idea of You. But today I'm going to review The Talented Mr. Ripley because I wanted to watch the movie that was associated with the miniseries that we reviewed last week. And The Talented Mr. Ripley, I'd seen it, and I hadn't seen it in a long time. And it's with Jude Law and Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow. And I wanted to just see whether or not I'd missed anything about that movie as it relates to the 8-part miniseries that we talked about. And I was thinking about the movie's fine. I would rather you watch the movie Talented Mr. Ripley than the 8-part series. As much as I like the 8-part series, the movie's just more condensed. You don't need to have the sort of depth that you get in the Ripley miniseries. You can just watch the movie. Although then you'll miss the guy from Lovesick, Johnny Flynn. But it got me thinking again about con men and about what the effort is to be in the con. You have to be the con, Prestige style, Christian Bale style. You've got to be willing to cut off your finger as the twin brother. Spoiler alert. And in business, it is the same thing. And what separates good business people from bad business people is knowing when to stop cutting your fingers off. When should you stop the con? And con is not pejorative in this case. The con I'm equating to your business plan. It's going after what you thought was going to be with your business. When is the time that you stop leaning into it, that you stop doubling down, and that you pivot and switch? Much like all the pivoting, I was thinking about the COVID pivoting. The COVID pivoting are these companies that stopped doing what they were doing during COVID and started making masks, started making sanitizer, started making toilet paper, whatever there was a shortage of. All these companies that expanded during COVID, changed during COVID, had tremendous revenue during COVID. And then it got me to Peloton. Peloton is a company that stock, they were at 160 during COVID. Do you remember when everyone was buying Pelotons? You couldn't get a Peloton because people were stuck in their home. Now Peloton is trading, I would say, somewhat below 5. And the question is, what is Peloton going to do? What do companies do when their stocks have been up and then they end up going down? Bally's is dealing with that. There are myriad companies who deal with it. The first thing you do is you change leadership at the top. It's like firing your manager. And the second thing you do is figure out how to adjust your business given the realities of today. Because the reality of today during COVID is everyone needed Pelotons. The reality of today is not as many people do. So how do you get them to want it again? How do you adjust to selling more into gyms or getting individuals to want to again work out at home? What are the additional things you can do as a company? The additional offerings? Do you think it's a coincidence that Fanatics gets into the sports betting world? Businesses are always trying to lean into the moment, lean into what can we do now to maximize our profitability. And I love watching businesses choose what they're doing and how much they lean in the same way that I loved watching Matt Damon lean into the con of becoming who he wanted to be, which is in the room where it happens. It is harder than you think to lean in that way. It's harder than you think to keep it going. But the hardest thing is to know when to stop. Knowing when to stop it may be the most important skill you could have as a business person, maybe even in your personal life as well. It's reading the room. Have you ever been with a group of people and somebody says something or does something and you say, read the room. This isn't the appropriate time to talk about this, or we're not going to air our dirty laundry in public. When you run a sports team, you are having those discussions more often than I care to admit, where you've got executives or owners or players who are not reading the room. It's all about timing of when you bring something up to the media or when you bring something up to your manager. Managers have a very hard job. Aaron Boone has amongst the hardest jobs in baseball. I've been saying that he is in grave danger. Is there any other kind? For years about his job. The Yankees are off to a great start, but Aaron Judge is not. Something came out yesterday that Aaron Judge may move in the lineup out of the 3-hole, that they may move him up to the 2 spot in order to give him better protection. Instead of having Stanton or Rizzo protect him, it would be Soto who would be protecting him. Protection means that they're going to pitch to Judge because they don't want to pitch to Soto, because Soto's having an MVP season so far. The 2-hole is where your best hitter is in the lineup. That started 10 years ago, where you want your best hitter in the 2-hole. And Soto is their best hitter. Aaron Boone said the other day, maybe it was yesterday, that he is considering moving Aaron Judge to the 2-hole. And that makes zero sense to me. I don't believe he is going to do it. As a matter of fact, Aaron Boone practically walked back his words once it got traction and said somebody's going to pay big time, meaning once Judge gets going. He's hitting under 200. He has 6 home runs. He is grounding into the most double plays, I want to say, of anyone in baseball, but I don't know if he has. He's grounded into 10 double plays. The Yankees themselves are a double play machine. During that 4-game series in Baltimore where they lost 3 out of 4 to their division rival, he went 1 for 13. He walked twice. Not exactly playing well. When do you decide to move a player in the lineup like an Aaron Judge, who they just signed? You all may remember. Is he in year 2, Coca, of that insane free agent deal when he was going to go to Frisco, but not? I think he's in year 2 of, I'm having a blank. Is it year 2 of 10? Whatever it is. He's just starting. I can't get out of my head telling you all that when he broke the record, hit 62 home runs, and everyone was crying, saying you have to re-sign Judge, you have to, that you'll never get Judge that good again. That was it. There's a reason why records are records and they're rarely broken. But to move a player in the batting order, the process is that the owner would be angry about the results of a player. The president would sit down with the GM and say, is there anything we need to talk about regarding Aaron Judge? The GM would say to the president, we got to base it on track record. We have to base it on the back of the baseball card, on career and the person. Aaron Judge will not slump for a season. He will get it going. He's not hurt. His toe's fine. Everything's going to be fine. The president says to the owner, we're going to hold off on any changes right now. The GM says to the manager, we're not making any changes in the lineup. The manager says to the GM, can we discuss doing something with Judge because we don't like the way he looks at the plate? The GM says to the manager, we're not going to discuss that now. The reason I wanted to bring you through this is that lineup changes do not happen. They're not originated by the manager. He can suggest it all he wants, but the lineups are done by the front offices. And there would be zero reason for Brian Cashman and his associates to move Judge, because what you don't do with a slumping player is do something that could impact a non-slumping player. If Juan Soto were slumping as well as Judge, I could argue persuasively for a switcheroo in the lineup. But when Soto's going the way he's going, there is zero chance that we're going to do anything to disrupt it. And we're not taking Aaron Judge and moving him to the 5 hole because we're not moving Stanton up. We're not moving Rizzo up. We're not moving Torres up. The lineup for the Yankees is exactly where it should be, where it needs to be. And the reason why it won't change is more Soto than Judge's track record. But what you're going to hear from the Yankees is, don't worry about Judge. Everything's fine. It's just a moment. What they're not telling you is that it's Soto is the actual reason. See what happens here with Aaron Judge, but I would not expect. Do you think the Yankees are going to appear on Roku a lot? I would think not. Roku? Yes, Roku. We're on Roku. We're on the DraftKings network as well. Roku is bidding for and coming close to completing a deal with Major League Baseball to replace Peacock as the Sunday morning exclusive window broadcast partner. Couple issues with Roku. Number one, they don't have any infrastructure to do any producing. These are going to be MLB produced games. Sound familiar? Peacock. Number two, players hate the Peacock deal and the Roku deal because they don't want to play at 11:30 or noon Eastern on a Sunday. Hate it. Hate the 1 o'clock games. The earlier games bother them even more. From baseball's perspective, Peacock was giving them $30 million a year for that package of Sunday games. Word has it that Peacock offered less than the $30 million per year to renew, and baseball said, no, thank you. We are going to value our product more, and we're going to go shop it elsewhere. Noah Gard and his group within Major League Baseball have found a home at Roku, and I think it is brilliant. It's brilliant because the demographic of people who can't find Roku is a demographic that baseball will not tell you this directly, but they don't really care about. The younger people have Roku easily, no worries. The problem is the younger people don't necessarily like waking up at 11:30 or noon to watch a game on a Sunday morning, but I digress. Or maybe the younger people are out working out, but I digress. The only thing that matters about this deal that MLB is announcing with Roku, as reported in The Athletic, is that there's another quote-unquote bidder for the rights of Major League Baseball nationally televised games. And coming on the heels of ESPN, rumored to be opting out of the current deal they have with baseball, which they're only going to do in order to renegotiate and get more content and get more advantages in their deal. They're not going to walk away from baseball. MLB will not be without ESPN, I promise you that. But the appearance of an opt-out gives the appearance that the value of your TV rights is decreasing. And when you're competing with the NFL and the NBA, whose broadcast rights are multiplying, you don't want to be the league where your broadcast rights are declining, because that impacts the value of your team. And that is where the problem is. Baseball, of course, is different in that baseball has a huge component of their existence as the local revenue, local broadcast revenue, and the local broadcast revenue is in shambles because of the Diamond bankruptcy, the regional sports collapse. So it was so important for baseball to cut this national deal, whatever the amount of money is, and it's smaller than 30, whatever MLB has to do to get the games on Roku, which is to produce the games, the actual amount of profit from the Roku deal is way less important than the appearance of what having a Roku deal means for Major League Baseball. And that's why they cut that, smartly so. You're going to read that Roku, this will be their first major live rights deal. I wanted to take 1 second on that, Coca, to tell you that that's a way bigger deal than you realize. Do you remember when Peacock got the playoff game and in the NFL? Amazon is doing the NBA deal, not announced. Amazon did the local regional deal with the Yankees. That is announced and operational right now. These platforms are loving live rights. Even Netflix, where it's the live rights are cheaper because they're doing one-off events, but they're still saying they have live rights. John Skipper would disagree with you. Speaking of which, we have a Sporting Class episode coming out today. Look for that on the Levitard channel after you engage with Nothing Personal. But these platforms getting live rights, the way Roku now has, it gives those networks legitimacy that is comparable to when Fox first took over the NFL deal. And what you may not remember, but go back and search this. It's funny to think about. Fox was trying to compete with NBC, CBS, and ABC. They were trying to be the legitimate fourth network. When they got the NFL deal, it catapulted them because of what it did to their ancillary programming, all the interest in the ancillary programming that ended up being, hello, The Simpsons, among others, Married with Children, among others. When you are associated with sports, good things happen financially. And that's why you have all these platforms competing for live rights. From a league standpoint, they're loving the competition. So when baseball announces this deal, they will announce it as a landmark deal, so critical, so thankful that they're with Roku. Roku will announce it as they are putting their first imprint in on sports live rights as part of driving people to their channel. It is the definition of a win-win. I'm excited for that announcement to be made. I'm way less excited about the announcement about the settlement in the NCAA. There is a bunch of antitrust cases going on right now with NCAA, against the NCAA. It's all about players wanting money, name, image, likeness. It's all about former players thinking they could have had money. It's great that Reggie Bush got his Heisman back. He would trade the Heisman right now. Trade it. I'm trying to do my Heisman pose. In order to get paid what some of these lesser players are getting paid these days in NIL. Word came out of the possibility of a huge settlement. ESPN got word. A huge settlement. Let's say more than $2.7 billion. This is that lawsuit where players are trying to allege antitrust is the reason they didn't get paid. But let's not talk the merits of the case, except to say that the lawyers for the players' view is that if the NCAA doesn't settle now, they'd be more than happy to go to trial. My argument is don't ever go to trial when you don't have to. Get the settlement and get yourself paid. If we really wanted to screw people, we would not settle. We'd go all the way through litigation, go through appeals, and stop people from getting their 10 grand or 100 grand for years. Sorry that your face got mashed up by a foul ball, but don't go all the way. What's interesting about this settlement is that the NCAA, you know, the national office run by Charlie Baker, the national office is going to pay this settlement. The NCAA directly is going to pay this settlement. They're not going to ask money from the conferences, from the schools directly. It's like from the parent body. It's like when the commissioner's office settles lawsuits on behalf of teams. We know they've got a reserve, except that's our money. It is the strangest thing that owners think about when the commissioner's office pays for something and the owners are like, phew, that's not out of my pocket, except the owners own the commissioner's office, 1/30th of it. When we're hearing that NCAA national office will pay this settlement and the schools are happy with that, I wonder whether the schools realize that that's coming from money that in theory is part of distributions, in theory is part of what could be used to bolster conferences. And on top of that, this settlement that is going to happen in the NCAA antitrust case, it's going to impact these schools very significantly. The schools are going to have to, as part of the settlement, pay players going forward significant amounts of money. There are parts of this settlement that talk about how much every athlete can make, how the revenue sharing would work, what each school has to pay. This is all about getting players money. The lawsuit was about past players. Now we're talking about current and future players. The way NIL has unraveled, it's already switching from players doing deals directly with companies. Now it will be players getting paid by schools. And you wonder whether players are employees? You wonder whether players need to be part of a union? They are straight employees. If this settlement goes through, it's another step toward that. As the conferences evaluate whether they want to continue their relationship with the NCAA or not, they've got to look at settlements like this, look at future implications of this model, and wonder to themselves, hey, is this just business? Good luck, former players, collecting that settlement money, and have a great weekend. This is nothing personal.